Hey guys, welcome to another video. Welcome to another Learning Japanese in Japan progress update. We are now 8 weeks in. Today I want to talk about three things. First of all, I want to talk about my overall progress. The second thing I want to talk about is what kind of a difference teachers can make if you have different teachers. And the third thing that I want to talk about is something that actually a subscriber asked me. He wanted to know what a typical day at the school looks like, how long it is, and what kind of stuff it is that we do in school. So let's get into it. My overall progress, it's interesting. When I got into A21 level class 4 weeks ago, I was dropped into pretty much the middle of it, meaning that the A21 book, they were in chapter 11 out of 18. So the first week was really rough because I went from knowing, the A1 stuff to the middle of A21. And the first week was super rough. After that, it got a little easier. And then after 2 weeks, we started over in the book. Basically, we started at chapter 1. That's the way it works at the school. It's, one book is 4 weeks, and depending on when you arrive in that class, you're either at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end, or somewhere in between. So once we started over in chapter 1 again, it felt like it was super easy. I was like, oh, what's going on? This is a little weird. But that's just the way it works, and I think it's fine. It's hard to tell how much I've actually improved because the first 4 weeks were super intense in that you learn so much new stuff all the time. The TIF form, the tough form, the nuff form, etc. And you learn all these things you've never had before, and all of a sudden you're able to use them in sentences and feels like you learned so much. And in the second 4 weeks, it definitely didn't feel like that anymore. It felt like I didn't progress as much, even though I know I've improved a bunch since then, but you can't feel it as much as you did in the beginning. I think that's completely normal, but it's definitely something you have to get used to. I guess an example I can give you about my improvement is that a few weeks ago I went to ship some packages to some friends in Switzerland. I went to the post office and I was very glad that the lady spoke some English because I didn't know what to do, and she helped me a lot. Yesterday I went back to the post office to ship another box to Switzerland. And this time, I did the whole post office procedure in Japanese. I walked in there, I told her I wanted to send it from here to Switzerland by air, and I asked how much it was, and she took the package and weighed it, and she told me that for some reason, it's cheaper to send it the fastest way, and she laughed, and I asked, oh, why is that? Why is it cheaper? And she's like, oh, I don't know. And she explained everything in Japanese, and I asked everything in Japanese, and then, wrote the shipping label. Because I wrote the contents in English, she asked me what was inside, so I was able to tell her what was inside the box. And because one of the things in there was like cooking utensils, she asked me if it was electrical, and I was like, no, it's you use it by hand, and just little things like that. It was really cool to be able to do that all in Japanese. Of course, my sentences were really broken up, and and I used a lot of just words and not complete sentences, but still, I was able to do it all in Japanese, and I didn't even try to use English. And that is something I could not have done 4 weeks ago. So I've definitely improved. It's a little harder to tell because when you go from 0 to the progress after 4 weeks, it's much more noticeable. Let's talk about the teachers. We have a bunch of different teachers at the school. Usually during a week you have anywhere from 2 to 3 different teachers on the days. And we didn't have a single bad teacher. I'm overall happy with all the teachers, but there were some really good teachers. There were some absolutely amazing teachers. The kind of teachers where you go to class and before you know it, it's noon and it feels like you just want to keep talking because the whole morning felt like it was just hanging out with friends and having conversations. And then some teachers are a bit more traditional style, and that they're holding up a lot of words and you have to read them out loud and then you have to use them in sentences, and it's just that it's really like some teachers just kind of encourage you to talk to each other and communicate in class, and like if someone says a sentence and someone else asks a question, and then the teacher will ask another question to keep the conversation going. And then some teachers, it's not that they don't like that kind of stuff, it's just that they're not as good as keeping the conversation going, I guess. So there's a big difference in teachers, and on some, like when we had the really good teachers, it felt like I learned a lot more than on the other days. For example, my little orange vocabulary book. I showed this in the last video, and this is what I use to write down all the extra vocabulary that I don't know or that we don't have as homework. It just goes in here. Everything we learn in class that's new, I put it in here. And on a day with one of those really good teachers where we talk a lot, I sometimes fill up 2 pages with new words. And then on other days when we had the, good teachers, but not amazing teachers, I would maybe fill up 1 page in 4 days. So that's kind of the difference. I think that way you might understand it a little bit better. So yeah, teachers can make a gigantic difference, and it's pretty crazy. But again, I'm happy with all the teachers we had. I learned a lot of Japanese, and yeah, I just wish that we had like the amazing teachers every single day, but of course it's not realistic. All right, let's get to the third point. What is a typical day like at the school? The school I go to has 2 different types of students. There's full-time and part-time students. Full-time students, or full and part-time students, start at 9 a.m. in the morning, and then part-time students are done at noon, and full-time students keep going until 3 p.m. There's a 15-minute morning break from 10:30 till 10:45, and a 45-minute lunch break from 12:15 until 1 p.m. The morning starts off with a kanji test. Now, of course, it's a little different in all the like in the levels. Like in A1, the beginner class, you don't have any kanji tests at all, and then they start in A2-1 and keep going A2-2, and then the further up you go, the more difficult and advanced they get. But in the morning, the first thing you have is a kanji test. It's usually a small page like this with, let's say, 5 sentences on it that includes some of the kanji you had the day before, like the ones you had to learn, and then sometimes some new ones that you don't know, just to kind of like throw you off a little bit, and sometimes some old ones you had a couple weeks ago, and you just read the sentence and you write the hiragana below the kanji, and that's the kanji test. It's not stressful at all. It's pretty laid back. It's a small test. It's pretty casual, but it's a good way of showing that you actually practiced the kanji you had the day before. After the kanji test, you flip the page over and it is dictation time. Usually around 3 to 5 sentences, including hiragana, katakana, and if you know them, you write the kanji, of course. And it's again pretty casual. Like, it's not stressful at all. It's not like you have to pass it in order to keep going to the school. Not at all, of course. And the funny thing is, some teachers will actually, the day before, at the end of the day, will like, oh, let's write down 3 sentences. Here they are. This is gonna be tomorrow's dictation, and it's always like, why? What's the point? I don't want to, practice tomorrow's dictation and just make sure I know it by heart so that I can just write it down tomorrow. I never practice that if they give it to us the day before. I just go in and see if I can actually write it. So, yeah, that's something that I don't really understand. But yeah, dictation is after a kanji test. After those tests are over, we go on to the new kanji, usually around 10 per day, and they will include both onyomi and kunyomi, and then also some example words. And sometimes these example words include kanji we haven't had, sometimes they include kanjis we had a while ago, and it's just a big mix of words that you learn for the next day. And I think it's a good amount. I think 10 kanji a day is a pretty good amount for the level that we are at. The B1 guys, those guys are pretty good at Japanese. They learn a lot more. It's a lot more stressful for them to learn them all. But for the A2-1 level, 10 a day, I feel like is a very good amount. After we get the new kanji, it is on to grammar, and this is just, your typical grammar stuff where they introduce new grammar to the class, and then you just practice it. You practice it in pairs or in small groups or in a conversation with the whole class, and you use examples and you talk about your last weekend and what you're gonna do next weekend, and just the typical stuff. And again, this is the part where you can notice the big differences in teachers, like the most, because with some teachers, the class goes from kanji and dictation tests to just let's introduce new kanji and then talk about it for 2 hours and just have a casual conversation. Whereas with other teachers, they will use a lot of papers that they hold up, and you have to read stuff out loud, and then hold another piece of paper up, and you have to read that out loud, and then it's like, that's where you notice the big difference. I usually fill up 1 page per day with new grammar. This example right here was on August 11th. That day we learned 2 different things that I separated with the big line in the middle so I don't get confused afterwards. And then below, actually right here, you can see one of those dictation examples that they give us at the end of the day. So this would have been the next day's dictation test kind of thing. We always have to write it down, but I never practice it because, again, I don't think that's great. I just try and write it in the morning to see if I can actually do it. And then we do that until noon, and then it's a lunch break. I usually bring lunch from the supermarket because it is cheaper, and in the supermarket I can buy big salads. I like salads, so I do that. We eat lunch in the student lounge, and after that it's off to the afternoon class for the full-time students. The afternoon class is 1 more hour of the same stuff we had in the morning, repeating the grammar again. Sometimes they introduce little nuances just in the afternoon class, but they do have to make sure that the part-time students can participate the next day so they don't fall behind. So there isn't too much new stuff in the afternoon, but it's good to just keep practicing. And then the second hour of the afternoon is what's called Japanese Plus. Japanese Plus is something you do not have in the beginner class in A1. We just started having it in A2-1. And what it is basically just extra stuff on top of what you already had during the day. So it's usually in 1 week kind of blocks. 1 week will be pronunciation, 1 week will be grammar, 1 week will be Japanese history, 1 week might be vocabulary, and so on and so forth. So the first week in A2-1, not only was it difficult because we just got dropped into the middle of the book of A2-1, basically, that was difficult. It was also grammar Japanese Plus week, and we had crazy advanced Japanese grammar. We were all just sitting there like, what is going on? We have no idea what the teacher is talking about. But it was okay, it was interesting. The second week of Japanese Plus was pronunciation, and that was not as great, I'm not gonna lie. It was kind of boring. All we did was just sit there and repeat numbers over and over again until we got them perfectly right, or a few words until we were able to pronounce them properly. And I understand that pronunciation is very important to me in the Japanese language, and it's a huge part of being able to speak it. But the way we did it in the Japanese Plus lesson is actually pretty boring. And the thing is that apparently they're going to change it up because a lot of people weren't too happy with it. So what they're going to do in the future is you're going to be able to choose what kind of Japanese Plus lesson you want to take in the afternoon. So if you're only interested in Japanese history, you can just go to that class and listen to that. If you only want to, if you want extra grammar, you can go there. If you want to be, do the pronunciation stuff, you can go there. So I think it's good that they're going to change it up because it wasn't so great, I'm not going to lie. But overall, it was great, the way they did it. And that's the end of the day. At 3 p.m. you're done. Usually there are afternoon activities at the school, and they can be anything from making sushi and making kakegori, the shaved ice, or playing Jenga, or we had a calligraphy activity once that was kind of cool. Sometimes I go to them, not so often though, to be honest. I usually just go to the cafe and just do homework. Sometimes I stay at school to do homework there, and just practice it for about an hour or two. And homework. Typical homework would be 1 page of vocabulary and 1 page of kanji, usually 10 kanji. That's a typical homework. It doesn't take too long, to be honest, but I spent some time practicing it. On Wednesday, we get 1 more extra piece of paper, and that's the paper you get for writing the speech. So on Wednesday, writing the speech is part of the homework. On Thursday, they correct your speech to see if you made any mistakes. And then from Thursday to Friday, you practice the speech on top of the rest of the homework, so you know it by heart for the speech time on Friday. And that is a typical day at the school. Very much focused on communication, with some teachers more than with others, like I said before. But yeah, if you have any questions, leave them down below in the comment section. I'd be happy to answer them there and or in the next video. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more, if you want to keep being updated with my progress. And don't forget to share the video with your friends. Thank you so much for that, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.